The unexpected guests, the Harmony Station floated in the serene darkness of space like a delicate crystal sculpture. Its transparent corridors spiraled outward in perfect geometric patterns, designed to promote peace and contemplation among the hundreds of species that called it home. For 3,000 years, the galactic consensus had maintained this sanctuary as a symbol of their commitment to nonviolence and cooperation. Every species within the consensus shared one fundamental trait. They had all evolved past aggression, past conflict, past the primitive need for dominance. Counselor Rithana glided through the main assembly hall, her translucent form shimmering with soft purple hues that indicated contentment. She was a luminal, a species composed primarily of organized light particles held together by quantum fields. Her people had transcended physical form millennia ago, existing now as pure energy shaped by consciousness. She paused at the central observation window, gazing out at the nebula beyond, its colors swirling in patterns that her species found deeply calming. The emergency alarm shattered her meditation. Rithana's light flickered to a harsh red, the luminal equivalent of shock. Emergency alarms hadn't sounded on Harmony Station in over 600 years. The last time was when a solar flare threatened the station's power grid, and even that had been resolved through careful mathematical calculations and patient waiting. She rushed to the emergency command center, where dozens of species were already gathering. The Whisper Collective, beings of pure thought who communicated through shared consciousness, were vibrating with distress. The Gentle Ones, massive balloon-like creatures who floated on internal gases, were deflating slightly in concern. Even the Stone Singers, patient rock-based life forms who moved once every few hours, had managed to orient themselves toward the main display screen. Commander Veltros stood at the center console, his 6 arms working multiple interfaces simultaneously. He was a Cathari, one of the few species in the consensus with actual limbs, though his people used them exclusively for delicate work like art and engineering. His shell-like exterior gleamed with nervous sweat, and his eye stalks swiveled frantically between screens. "What's happening?" Rithana demanded, her light pulsing with authority. Veltros turned 3 of his eye stalks toward her. "We received a distress signal from the colony on HFY Prime. There's been an accident in their atmospheric processor. The backup systems failed, and oxygen levels are dropping rapidly. They have maybe 8 hours before the entire population suffocates." Rithana dimmed with worry. HFY Prime housed over 40,000 consensus citizens, mostly scholars and artists who had chosen the remote world for its inspiring landscapes. "Have we dispatched rescue vessels?" "That's the problem," Veltros said, his voice trembling. "Our nearest ship is 12 hours away. We don't have the speed to reach them in time. I've consulted with the Navigation Guild, and there's simply no way to accelerate our vessels enough without risking structural failure." The Whisper Collective pulsed with shared sorrow. They were already composing memorial songs for the lost colony. The consensus had long ago accepted that some problems had no solutions, that the universe sometimes demanded sacrifice. It was better to accept loss with grace than to struggle against the inevitable, but Rithana couldn't accept it. 40,000 lives snuffed out while they watched helplessly? There must be something. "Have we checked all nearby vessels? Commercial transports? Private ships?" Veltros manipulated his console, pulling up a star chart. "I've scanned everything within range. There's nothing fast enough except—" He paused, his shell darkening with what looked like fear. "There's one ship. It appeared on our sensors 3 days ago. They've been broadcasting friendship messages and requesting permission to dock. We've been avoiding responding." "Why?" Rithana asked, though something in Veltros' tone made her light flicker uncertainly. "Because they're from a species we've never encountered. They call themselves humans. And Counselor, their ship is a warship." The word hung in the air like poison, Warship. The consensus had no warships. They had no concept of war. The very idea was as alien to them as breathing water or eating stones. How do you know it's a warship? Rithana asked carefully. Valtros displayed an image on the main screen. The assembled species collectively recoiled. The ship was nothing like their elegant vessels. It was angular, brutal, covered in what appeared to be armor plating. Strange protrusions extended from its hull like weapons. Burn marks scarred its surface. It looked like something designed to hurt, to fight, to destroy. Their communication said they come in peace, Valtros continued. They said they detected our network and want to establish diplomatic relations. But, Counselor, I've analyzed their broadcasts. These beings are predators. They have forward-facing eyes. They consume other living creatures, and their history is filled with something they call warfare. They fight each other constantly. Rithana felt her light dim to almost nothing. Predators. Violent beings who solved problems through force. Everything the consensus had evolved beyond. But 40,000 lives hung in the balance. Can their ship reach Threshva Prime in time? She asked quietly. Valtros checked his calculations. Yes, their propulsion system is incredibly powerful. They could reach the colony in 4 hours, maybe less. Then we have no choice. Send them the distress signal. Request their assistance. The command center erupted in protests. The Whisper Collective sent waves of fear and disgust. The Gentle Ones released stress gases that fogged the air. Even the Stone Singers managed to emit a low, rumbling sound of disapproval. Counselor, you can't be serious, Valtros said. We'd be inviting predators into our space. What if they decide to attack? What if this is some kind of trick? What if 40,000 people die because we were too afraid to ask for help? Rithana countered. Her light blazed bright gold, the color of absolute conviction. We pride ourselves on choosing peace, on being civilized. But what kind of civilization lets thousands die rather than face something that scares them? Send the message. Valtros hesitated, then slowly manipulated his console. The message transmitted, racing through space toward the human vessel. For several minutes, nothing happened. The assembled species waited in terrified silence. Then the response came. The voice was strange, rough-edged, but somehow warm. This is Captain Maria Rodriguez of the UE's Defiant. We copy your distress call and are altering course immediately. We'll reach your colony in 3.7 hours. Don't worry, we've got you covered. Defiant out. They're coming, Valtros whispered. What have we done? The next 3 hours were the longest of Rithana's life. She stayed in the command center, monitoring the human ship's progress. It moved with impossible speed, its engines burning at levels that should have torn the vessel apart. Yet it held together, driving forward with relentless determination. Asterisk, when the Defiant reached Threshva Prime, the entire consensus watched through the colony's external cameras. The human ship was even more intimidating up close. It positioned itself above the failing atmospheric processor, and large panels opened on its underside. They're deploying something, Valtros reported. Multiple objects. They're missiles. Panic spread through the command center. The humans were attacking. They'd tricked the consensus, and now 40,000 innocent beings would die. But the missiles didn't explode. They struck the atmospheric processor with precise accuracy and attached themselves to its surface. Suddenly, pure oxygen began flowing from the missiles into the colony's air supply. The dropping oxygen levels stabilized, then began climbing. Asterisk, they're emergency atmospheric generators, Rithana realized. They're saving them. But the humans weren't done. The Defiant's main bay doors opened, and dozens of smaller craft emerged. They were angular and aggressive-looking, moving in tight formations that spoke of military training. They landed throughout the colony, and figures emerged. The consensus got their first look at humans. They were tall, bipedal, covered in some kind of protective suits. They moved with shocking speed and coordination, spreading through the colony in organized teams. They carried equipment that looked disturbingly like weapons. Asterisk. They're entering every building, Val Tross said, his voice rising in pitch. They're going everywhere. What are they doing? Rithana watched in confusion and growing fear. The humans moved like hunters, like soldiers invading conquered territory. They broke into groups, spreading out with military precision. Some kind of handheld devices scanned each building. Then she understood. They're searching for survivors. They're making sure everyone is accounted for. Indeed, the humans were methodically checking every structure, every room. When they found consensus citizens too weak to move, they carried them gently to medical stations they'd set up. When they found structural damage, they immediately began repairs. They worked with fierce efficiency, never stopping, never slowing. Asterisk. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the communication channel again. Atmospheric processor is temporarily stabilized. We're setting up a replacement core now. Your people are safe, but you're going to need a permanent fix. We've got the parts aboard the Defiant. Permission to begin full repairs? Valtros looked at Rithana, his eye stalks trembling. She took a deep breath, if such a thing could be said of a being made of light, and responded. Permission granted, Captain. And thank you. Just doing our job, Rodriguez replied. Humanity's got your back. Rodriguez out. The repairs took 6 more hours. The humans worked tirelessly, rotating shifts without complaint. They brought their own supplies, refusing any compensation. They treated every consensus citizen they encountered with careful gentleness, as if aware of how frightening they appeared. When it was done, the colony was not just saved, but improved. The humans had upgraded systems, reinforced structures, and left behind spare parts and detailed maintenance guides. As the Defiant prepared to depart, Rithana made a decision. Captain Rodriguez, we would like to formally invite you to Harmony Station. We... owe you a proper welcome to the Galactic Consensus. There was a pause. Then Rodriguez replied, and Rithana could hear something like joy in her voice. We'd be honored. Give us coordinates, and we'll be there tomorrow. As the communication ended, Veltros turned to Rithana. What do we do now? They're coming here, to our home. These predators with their weapons and their warships. Rithana's light pulsed with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Fear, yes, but also something else. Curiosity? Hope? Now, she said softly, we learn what it means to be truly civilized. We meet them with open hearts, and we try to understand. They saved 40,000 lives today without asking for anything in return. That has to mean something. But as she said it, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The humans were coming to Harmony Station, and somehow Rithana knew that the consensus would never be quite the same again. Asterisk. Understanding through chaos. The docking bay of Harmony Station had been transformed overnight. Rithana had insisted on creating a proper welcoming ceremony, though the preparations revealed just how unprepared the consensus was for this moment. The Decoration Guild had spent hours arranging bioluminescent flowers from 17 different worlds, creating patterns meant to soothe and calm. The Melody Weavers practiced their most peaceful compositions, songs designed to lower heart rates and promote tranquility. Every detail was chosen to project the consensus values of harmony, peace, and gentle cooperation. Yet despite all the beauty, fear hung in the air like a thick fog. Nearly 500 representatives from various species had gathered, but most stood as far from the docking port as physics would allow. The Whisper Collective had formed a tight cluster in the far corner, their shared consciousness vibrating with anxiety. Several of the gentle ones had deflated so much they barely floated. Even the normally stoic stone singers had positioned themselves near emergency exits. Ready to flee despite their glacial movement speed, Rithana floated near the front, her light flickering between grave gold and nervous blue. Beside her, Veltros fidgeted with all 6 arms, adjusting and readjusting his ceremonial sash. He had reviewed the security footage from HFY Prime dozens of times, analyzing every human movement, every gesture, trying to understand what they were dealing with. Their coordination is unnatural, he had told Rithana during one of their planning sessions. They move like a single organism, like a predator swarm. And their equipment, everything they carry, looks like it could be weaponized. Even their medical tools have sharp edges. Now, as the U.E.'s Defiant approached the station, those words echoed in Rithana's thoughts. The ship's arrival was announced by a low rumble that vibrated through the station structure. Consensus vessels docked with barely a whisper, using gentle magnetic locks and careful maneuvering. The Defiant came in like a controlled explosion, its massive engines burning bright even as it slowed, its hull seeming to challenge the very concept of delicate approach. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic clang that made half the assembled species flinch. For a long moment, nothing happened. The airlock remained sealed. The silence stretched, and Rithana could feel the collective tension rising. Were the humans having second thoughts? Were they preparing weapons? Were they about to storm through in an invasion force? Then the airlock door hissed open, releasing a cloud of steam that billowed into the bay. From within the mist, figures emerged. 5 humans walked into Harmony Station, and the effect was immediate and visceral. They were massive. Not as large as some consensus species, but they moved with a density and presence that made them seem to fill twice the space they occupied. They wore dark uniforms that emphasized their build, their strength, their undeniable physicality. But what struck Rithana most were their eyes. Those forward-facing predator eyes swept across the bay with an intensity that felt like being scanned by targeting systems. The lead human was a woman with dark skin and close-cropped hair. Her uniform decorated with symbols that likely indicated rank and achievement. She walked with absolute confidence, her stride purposeful and direct. Behind her, 4 others moved in a formation that looked simultaneously protective and aggressive. They were a unit, a team, a pack. The woman stopped at what she must have calculated was a respectful distance, though she had crossed half the bay in seconds, while most consensus species would have taken minutes to achieve the same. She smiled, and Rithana saw several species near her physically recoil. The smile revealed teeth, flat ones and sharp ones, a mouth designed for omnivorous consumption. A predator's smile. "Greetings," the woman said, her voice carrying clearly through the bay. "I'm Captain Maria Rodriguez of the United Earthship Defiant. On behalf of humanity, thank you for this incredible welcome. We're honored to be here." Rithana forced herself forward, her light pulsing what she hoped was a welcoming pattern. "Captain Rodriguez, I am Counselor Rithana of the Luminal Collective. We are deeply grateful for your assistance at HFY Prime. You saved 40,000 lives. There are no words sufficient to express our thanks." Rodriguez's smile widened, showing more of those dual-purpose teeth. "No thanks necessary. We help where we can. That's just what neighbors do." She gestured to her team. "This is Commander James Park, my first officer, Dr. Sarah Okoro, our Chief Medical Officer, Lieutenant Diego Santos, Security Chief, and Specialist Chun Wei, our Cultural Liaison." Each human nodded as they were introduced, and Rithana noticed how their eyes never stopped moving. They were constantly scanning, assessing, cataloging everything around them. It wasn't hostile, exactly, but it was intense, predatory, Even their stillness contained coiled energy, like they were ready to explode into motion at any moment. Perhaps, Ridhana said carefully, we could give you a tour of the station, help you understand our community. That would be wonderful, Rodriguez replied enthusiastically. We're eager to learn everything about the consensus. As they began walking through the station's corridors, Ridhana noticed the reactions of the citizens they passed. Species pressed themselves against walls, creating as much distance as possible. Some fled into side passages. Others froze in place, caught between fear and the consensus prohibition against rudeness. The humans noticed too. She could see it in the way their expressions shifted, becoming more careful, more subdued. They reached one of the station's famous meditation gardens, a vast space where plants from hundreds of worlds grew in careful harmony. The melody weavers were performing, their songs creating visible ripples in the air that flowers swayed to in perfect synchronization. It was a masterpiece of peaceful coexistence. Dr. Okoro gasped, her hand going to her chest. This is beautiful. This is... I've never seen anything like this. Ridhana felt a flicker of pride. This garden has been grown for 800 years. Each species contributes plants that complement the others. Everything exists in balance. Balance, Rodriguez repeated softly, walking slowly through the garden. That's what you've built here, isn't it? A whole civilization based on balance and peace. For 3,000 years, Beltros said, speaking for the first time since the humans had arrived. We have not known war, violence, or aggression. We have evolved beyond such primitive needs. Something flickered across Rodriguez's face. It wasn't anger, but it was complex. Hurt, perhaps? Or was it something else? I see, she said quietly. And now we've arrived. Primitives with our worship and our violent history. The statement hung in the air uncomfortably. Ridhana felt her light dim with embarrassment. Captain, I didn't mean to... It's okay, Rodriguez interrupted gently. You're right to be cautious. Humans are violent. We have fought wars. We have hurt each other and our world. We carry that history with us. She paused by a flowering plant that reached toward her with curious tendrils. But we're trying to be better. That's why we came out here, to the stars. To find others, to learn, to grow. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Not the gentle chimes of normal alerts, but the harsh, urgent wail of immediate danger. Valtros immediately accessed a wall panel, his eye stalks spreading wide in shock. Asteroid storm, he announced, his voice cracking. A rogue planetoid passed through the outer system and destabilized the local belt. We have hundreds of objects on collision course with the station. Impact in 4 minutes. Panic erupted in the garden. Species began fleeing in all directions, though most moved with the careful slowness of beings who had never had to run from anything. The melody weaver's songs collapsed into discordant noise. Even the stone singers attempted to accelerate their movement, though their best speed was still glacial. What are your defensive systems? Rodriguez demanded, immediately switching into what was clearly a command mode. Defensive systems? Valtros repeated blankly. We have shields, but they're designed for radiation and micrometeors, not this kind of bombardment. We have never needed weapons or defensive capabilities. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. She tapped a device on her wrist. Rodriguez to Defiant. Emergency situation. Multiple asteroid impacts imminent on Harmony Station. Prepare all point defense systems and bring the ship to combat readiness. The response came instantly. Defiant acknowledging. Point defense online. Ready for your command, Captain. Rodriguez turned to Ridhana. With your permission, Counselor, we can help. But we need to act now. Ridhana didn't hesitate. Do whatever is necessary. Rodriguez's team moved like lightning. Commander Park was already running calculations on his handheld device. Lieutenant Santos sprinted back toward the docking bay with speed that seemed impossible. Dr. Okoro began organizing evacuation routes, her medical training apparently including emergency management. Specialist Chun started coordinating with confused consensus citizens, somehow communicating calmly despite the chaos. Defiant, this is Rodriguez. You are weapons free. Engage incoming threats. Prioritize largest objects first. Through the garden's transparent ceiling, they could see the asteroids approaching, dozens of tumbling rocks that would shred the delicate station like paper. Then the Defiant moved. The warship positioned itself between the station and the incoming storm, and its hull came alive with light. Point defense cannons emerged from hidden ports, tracking and firing in a spectacular display of coordinated violence. Lasers lanced out, cutting through asteroids and reducing them to harmless dust. Smaller projectile weapons created a web of intersecting fire, fragmenting medium-sized rocks. For the largest threats, missiles deployed, intercepting and destroying them at safe distances. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. It was utterly unlike anything the consensus had ever witnessed. The humans had turned their warship into a shield, using weapons designed for destruction to protect and preserve. Rodriguez stood in the garden, watching the battle through the ceiling, her expression focused and calm. She spoke constantly into her communicator, adjusting firing patterns, redirecting resources, coordinating a defensive dance that saved thousands of lives with each passing second. Large fragment breaking through Sector 7, came a voice from her communicator. Too close for missiles. Santos, you in position? Rodriguez asked. Affirmative, Captain. Firing now. Through a side viewport, Rethana saw Lieutenant Santos had positioned himself in an observation blister with what looked like a portable weapon. He fired a series of precise shots, each one hitting tumbling asteroid fragments and nudging them away from critical station structures. He was using a weapon inside their peaceful station, and he was saving them. The bombardment lasted 2 minutes and 33 seconds. When it was over, Harmony Station was intact. Not a single consensus citizen had been harmed. The surrounding space was filled with asteroid dust that sparkled like new stars in the Oz. Light of the distant sun. Rodriguez lowered her communicator and turned to face the assembled consensus members who had watched the entire engagement. Her expression was tired but gentle. Station is secure. All threats neutralized. No casualties. Rithana found herself floating forward, her light pulsing with emotions she didn't have colors for. You saved us. Again, you used your weapons, your violence, to protect us. That's what weapons are for, Rodriguez said softly. Protection, defense, keeping people safe. She gestured to her team, who were returning from their various positions. We're not violent because we enjoy it. We're capable of violence because sometimes the universe demands it. Because sometimes peaceful people need someone willing to stand between them and danger. Valtros approached cautiously, his eye stalks focused on Rodriguez. I don't understand. You could have left. You could have protected your ship and departed. Why risk yourselves for a station full of beings who feared you? Rodriguez looked genuinely confused by the question. Because you needed help. Because we could help. Isn't that reason enough? But you're predators, Valtros said, and there was no accusation in his voice now, only genuine confusion. You're violent. Your ship is designed for war. You carry weapons. How can you be so ... double quotes? He struggled for the word. ... kind? Commander Park spoke up for the first time. Maybe that's exactly why we can be kind. We know what violence is. We understand the cost of conflict. We've seen what happens when help doesn't come. So when we can help, When we can protect, when we can save people, we do it. Every single time. Dr. Okoro added, humans contain contradictions. We can be violent and gentle, aggressive and nurturing. We're predators who adopted prey animals as beloved companions. We're warriors who write poetry. We're complicated, and maybe that's our strength. Rithana felt something shifting in her understanding. She had spent days being terrified of these humans, seeing only their capacity for violence. But that capacity was matched by an equally powerful capacity for compassion. They were dangerous, yes, but they chose to be dangerous in defense of others. Captain Rodriguez, Rithana said formally, her light glowing the purest gold she could manage. The galactic consensus would be honored if humanity would consider joining our community. We have much to learn from each other. Rodriguez's smile this time seemed different. Less predatory, more ... human. The honor would be ours, counselor. We came to the stars looking for friends. I think we just found thousands of them. Over the following hours, something remarkable happened. As word spread of what the humans had done, consensus citizens began approaching them. Cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. The Whisper Collective shared songs of gratitude. The Gentle Ones released celebratory gases that smelled of flowers. Even the stone singers managed to gather around, their slow movement expressing approval. Specialist Chun Wei found herself surrounded by young members of various species, all asking questions about Earth, about humans, about the stars beyond their peaceful corner of space. She answered each question with patience and warmth, helping them understand that difference didn't mean danger. As Rithana watched the humans interacting with her people, she realized something profound. The consensus had spent 3,000 years building peace by avoiding anything that challenged it. They had created harmony by excluding anything that might disrupt it. But the humans were showing them a different path. True peace wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the choice to protect rather than harm, to build rather than destroy, to help rather than abandon. The humans were predators, yes. They were violent, capable of terrible destruction. But they had chosen to be something more. They had evolved not past their nature, but beyond it, carrying their strength as a tool for protection rather than domination. Counselor, Rodriguez said, approaching Rithana as the celebration continued around them, I wanted to ask you something. You were afraid of us. Terrified, actually. But you still called for our help. That took incredible courage. Rithana's light flickered with something like embarrassment. I was more afraid of losing 40,000 lives. Fear of action seemed smaller than fear of inaction. That's the most human thing I've heard all day, Rodriguez said with a laugh. Maybe we're not so different after all. Maybe fear and courage aren't opposites. Maybe courage is just being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. As the celebration stretched into the station's night cycle, Rithana found herself filled with hope. The galactic consensus was about to change. The humans would bring their contradictions, their strength, their capacity for both violence and kindness. It would be challenging, uncomfortable, and sometimes frightening. But as she watched a group of Whisper Collective younglings playing a human game called tag with Specialist Chun Wei, all of them laughing in their various ways, Rithana realized that change was exactly what they needed. The humans hadn't just saved the station twice. They had saved the consensus from stagnation, from the comfortable but limiting peace of the unchanged. The universe was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable. And now the consensus had friends who understood that. Friends who were willing to stand between danger and the innocent. Friends who proved that strength and kindness could exist in the same heart. Humanity had arrived at Harmony Station, and nothing would ever be quite the same. But for the first time in her long life, Rithana wasn't afraid of change. She was excited for it. Asterisk.